Hello, Forrest. It's been a long time since I've made a video for you. Since then, I've been traveling. I've visited about a half dozen countries, and I've had to deal with all the difficulties involved in traveling and dealing with all the work issues that have piled up since then, since having come back to Japan. Over the summer, and especially more recently, I've been thinking about a conversation that we had back in May. You had shown me Eric Sloane's original manuscript for his last book, 80, together with comments and corrections that he had made. It was nice to have had a chance to look through that. I had already bought my copy of 80 a year earlier. I had gotten it because I wanted to find out more about what was going on in the introduction to The Thrill of the Chase when you had referred to it, and when you had talked about Eric Sloane. It had a sense of importance to that chapter, and also something else that I had seen online about somebody had floated the idea that somehow Eric Sloane had had a lot to say about the color brown, and I thought it may have had some connection to the interpretation of brown for the poem. So I thought, okay, seems interesting enough. I ordered a copy of the book off Amazon. It's out of print, but I was able to find a used copy, and I think if any other searchers are interested in the book, they shouldn't have too much trouble finding one as well. And when we talked about 80, I had also just read your own book, $17 a Square Inch. I had that fresh in my mind at the time. Now, I don't have that book handy with me because I have lent it to Helena, and she has it with her in Singapore, and she's also enjoyed it just as much as I did. When you had shown me the manuscript for 80, I didn't have too much to say at the time. I had just come back from a very exhausting day, boots on the ground, and the driving, with the jet lag, and with also vertigo that I suffer from time to time. All I really could do at that time was to soak that in and to make some impressions, but this has been kicking around in my head ever since. And since then, I've had a chance to read 80 once again. And going through this and reading what Eric Sloane had to write for, I guess would be the third time, if we count reading his original manuscript as the second time. The standout for me, the thing that made the most impression on me in his book, was what he had to say on the subject of awareness. So let me read a couple of passages from his book. First of all, from the dedication, Eric Sloane writes, "The artist's existence is a mosaic of memories. He himself lives in hope of becoming a memory. I dedicate this work to all those who tolerated me, encouraged me to write and paint, and afforded me 80 years of comfort, understanding, and a richer awareness of life." And later on in the book proper, and I can't say which page it's on because just like you said in The Thrill of the Chase, Eric Sloane was not in the habit of putting numbers to anything, so there are no page numbers. But fairly early on in the book, "The artist in any profession is essentially a sensitive person. The sensitive mind sees and hears and feels what others cannot, and the true artist does not paint just for the joy of his own self-expression. He exists for the purpose of passing on his peculiar awareness to others, thereby enriching them, so they might enjoy life as much as he. Art, then, is more communication of knowledge than an exhibition of talent. And when a writer or painter knows that he has communicated his awareness, there is no greater satisfaction. And the third passage on awareness is actually not in 80, but it's in your book, $17 a square inch. You write, in 1984, Eric left a note on my desk. It was a familiar theme. And from this point on, you quote the note that he left for you. If I were to condense the essence of culture and art to one word, I would choose awareness. I am convinced that outside of pure craftsmanship, the only talent the real artist has is his awareness. The artist is gifted in sensitivity. He is more aware, seeing, hearing, and feeling more than the average person, and his reason for existence is, by his art, to pass on that sensitivity and awareness to others, and thereby enriching their existence. So, to me, awareness is the central theme of Eric Sloane's book, 80. He was approaching, as he thought, the end of his life. He had planned it to be one last memoir. And it was one last great chance for him to communicate his awareness, not just of what he could perceive, not just of what he put into his paintings or even into his writings, but to communicate his awareness of what it meant to be an artist, just like in these passages that I've read. It's fascinating to me that he would communicate to this to you personally in the form of a note left for you on your desk. I don't think it would be wrong to say that Eric Sloane was more than a friend of yours, Forrest. I don't think it's wrong to say that he was a mentor of yours. If we take all three of these books together, which is 80, $17 a square inch, and The Thrill of the Chase itself, I would say that one of the things that you are doing with The Thrill of the Chase is to emulate what Eric Sloane did with 80. We can see the progression through the book as a growth of awareness in the lessons, life lessons that are learned. So there's something of this nature in most of the chapters, especially the later chapters. We have, in teachers, there's so many correspondences, I think, between The Thrill of the Chase and things that are touched upon in 80. For example, in Teachers with Ropes, where you encouraged children to make a connection with art by being very tactile, to touch it and to experience it, and that way to reinforce their impressions and their memories. It's like an awareness development exercise, if you will. You know, if you just look at it, you could look at it quickly and casually, but if you get to the point where you examine it so closely as to come and touch it, it develops a deeper awareness of what it is that you're doing. And Eric Sloane in 80 describes doing essentially the same thing, touching an artwork to see the thickness of the paint that had been left behind. In chapters like Fly Water or Dancing with the Millennium, where you talk about describing how long a piece of iron has to be in making a horseshoe, these sorts of appreciations for doing things and being in the moment of it, and to touch it and to use all your senses in order to get what you can from the experience. These things, I think, are one of the essences of the books that you've read, that you've written. And maybe the most important example of this is of the growth of awareness is in My War for Me. So the whole chapter, I think, leads to a statement that you make towards the end of the chapter, which is this: when this realization hit me, at last I knew, if I cannot enrich those with whom I interact each day and cause them to be better for my having passed their view, then I have wasted my turn. And think of how that reflects with the quotes that I've read from Eric Sloane, both in his note and in his book 80, to enrich those that he's interacted with the gift of of communicating his awareness. Okay, so then to summarize all this, I think the thrill of the chase is all about the growth of awareness, your personal growth in life, from one end to the other in the book. So you are forwarding the lessons that you've learned in life and forwarding an appreciation of them, and starting from your childhood experiences growing up in the Rockies and in Yellowstone National Park, to your experiences and what you learned in Vietnam, to your friendship with Eric Sloane itself, to the passion that you have for collecting archaeology, history, and culture. Now, some of this has been openly reinforced by you outside the books that you've written, in the interviews that you've given and the statements that you've made, to get out, that you wanted to encourage people to get out and experience the mountains and the rivers for themselves. But other lessons, I think, are less open or even hidden, waiting for us to discover them for ourselves. You have put your book in our hands, you've put the poem in our hands, you've pointed towards growth, the growth of awareness, and I think you are waiting for us to continue to make these connections. So, in my view, Eric Sloane was your mentor, Forrest, and in his own gentle and humorous way, he set the bar very high for you. I think that with the chase, you are emulating him as an artist, using those tools that come most naturally to you. First, the Rocky Mountains itself, the scope of the treasure hunt, is like a canvas. It's your background within which we would experience the hunt. It is a background within which we are to grow our own awareness to match yours. This is one of the, if not the primary goal of the treasure hunt, in my view. But the Rocky Mountains is not, the experience of the Rocky Mountains is not where all this ends. It is not the only thing in play. In my opinion, it's my belief that you've arranged things so that the experience of finding the treasure must bring us to an understanding of all your passions and experiences in life. You want us to get our hands dirty, our eyes open, and our minds engaged. I think you want us to know what it's like to be close to a treasure, physically close to a treasure that may or may not be there. When we go boots on the ground and we are in an area which we think has potential, it's very similar to the experiences that you must have had in looking for treasures in your own life, in the archaeological work that you did at San Lazaro, or in North Africa, flying over and looking for patterns under the sand to see whether something of interest might be there, or when you got kicked out of Pompeii 3 times in trying to find what you could there. These types of experiences, if you write a few sentences about them don't have the same impact as getting us out and actually experiencing, gaining these life experiences for ourselves. I think that you want us to see your stories and your experiences all reflected in the landscape that's there. Different people, different searchers have different opinions about this. But as I said in an earlier video, I think that somewhere in the landscape around where the treasure is hidden, there is something that you have architected or engineered so that the stories in your book are reflected there in some way. If the treasure is ever found, the experience of the finder will have been crafted by you. No one will ever find your treasure, in my opinion, without a full measure of understanding and awareness of what you have chosen to communicate. Like Eric Sloane has done for you, I believe that you have set the bar very high for us.